Good evening and welcome to Life, Death and Everything in Between. We can't guarantee that literally. In fact, we rather hope that isn't our promise literally, but you get the gist. We're happy to talk about anything between those 2 points that seem to symbolize life for human beings. Life, death and everything in between. And here on the left of the screen, Jacqueline Mary Brown, I was going to say whose idea this was. You are the font of inspiration for this, Jacqueline. How are you this week?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'd like to say good evening, everybody who might be here or watching in the future. And nice to be able to talk, just to talk. Good to Talk used to be a sort of one of those telephone adverts, I think. But it is good to talk. It's good to talk freely. It's good to talk truthfully about what's going on in us and what might be going on in other people. Let's hear from other people.
Yes.
We want others to join in because here we are living together on this planet. And I'm probably dying. Some of us are dying.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get on with it. Let's just talk about it.
Yes. It does seem to be not an inevitability, but there's something about human beings that brings out the best in them and the worst, actually, when they communicate. And it's almost like a necessary evil in a way to bridge the gap between our I think it's illusory, but this sense of separation and isolation we have as individual units of human bodies. And the way to close the gap, is it Michelangelo, the creation picture?
Yes.
The way to close the gap, certainly between human beings, is to communicate, isn't it? And as we seem to have it in our current age, it's very sensory and verbal. It may have been a lot more intuitive and psychic in other manifestations of human beings, but certainly in the world we're in now, it seems to be about sensory communication, and that's how the gap is closed between us, or indeed how it's made even more of a gulf at the moment. So we take a bit of a risk, don't we, when we open our mouths to reach out and communicate with another. But then again, I don't know of any other way of bridging the gap and taking that risk.
Well, I think actually this is a very, very big subject because it's all about words, and believing as I do that God brought creation into being through words. They're going to be very important for those that are created to be like him, to be similar to him, to be close to him. And I do believe animals and insects and birds communicate, but they don't communicate with words in the same way as we do. They don't have a language. They may have sounds, and they definitely depend on senses, and some of them have got very highly developed senses that we don't have. Even a salmon can it knows where it's got to go to spawn and things like that, and they operate on a built-in instinct. But I don't think they sit down and discuss the state of the world or the state of the rivers, or well, if they do, I don't know about it. But I think that's something that we have in common with God, is the speech. And it's probably why it causes so much trouble. Really.
Yeah. Well, it's very powerful, isn't it? Very powerful.
Yes. And we use it. If we use it as he uses it, if we come into agreement with him and use words as he uses them, then they're in talking about ourselves or other subjects really that relate to our world, then we come into agreement with him. And if you've got two people in agreement with him, they're not going to be clashing. So there's definitely something to do with speech and words that can be used in a godly way, or if you think the opposite of God is the devil, then they can be used in a devilish and satanic way to cause trouble. And I was thinking about this evening earlier on. I was going to talk about choice, and I'm not ruling that out for this evening, because as I'm speaking, I'm realizing that God's always saying to us, I lay before you life and death, blessings and curses, choose life. And if he is the author of life, the giver of life, then obviously choosing life chooses his way. And that comes in language. That's how he speaks to us, in whatever language that the Bible may be translated to. But at one time, everybody spoke the same language until something called the Tower of Babel. This is according to the Bible. When God actually confused people's languages because they were continuing along the line of playing God for themselves, and they were trying to build a tower which would symbolically, it was to reach heaven and to be God over the universe they lived in. Well, that's a picture that paints. And he confused their language, so they couldn't work together on that project without fighting.
Well, a great solution.
And I think that's carried on a bit.
It would appear to, wouldn't it? Or it would appear to. Yeah. And I think we don't. I'm not sure we do recognise the power of our words. And if let's say they are powerful, which I think we're agreeing on, and they have been so misused, it's no wonder that we live in such confusion.
Exactly.
Setting out. I mean, we're not even mentioned prayer, have we? Which is another set of evocations through speech, even if it's within. But this, I mean, if you imagine a world of billions of people, all speaking their physical sensory languages out, and then their internal dialogue or monologue or whatever, all going out into this energetic soup. That feels to me like it would be quite something to contend with, and could account for the apparent confusion in the world.
Well, it must cause terrible confusion, and it does cause confusion. And even as you're speaking, what's coming to mind for me is that little rhyme that we used to say as kids, that sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I mean, what a complete lie that is. It's an absolute lie.
Yes.
Because words, physical wounds heal very quickly and well, especially if you're healthy. I mean, it's quite amazing, if you just cut your finger or split your thumb on a piece of paper, which I do quite frequently, get paper cuts, and it'll start to bleed all over the careful card I've just written out. I can't really send it to anybody after that. And but it heals so quickly.
Yes.
But those words stay within us.
Yeah.
I believe, shows the power of words. And people's lives are created quite often by the words that have been spoken over them.
Yes.
By their parents or by other people. And I mean, I know that I've still got wounds inside that have come from being told what I now know are lies about myself, but so that I believed in some way,
Mm.
and they restrict us. I'm going from me to us, but I think they do with everybody. I don't know anybody who's totally unaffected by words.
No. I think people are able to repair, as it were, through rationalization, but the effect is felt on a different level to rationalization, isn't it? So it's after when you can do therapy and rationalize the effects, but that suggests that it's gone in and has had an effect such that it can be rationalized or therapized away in the future.
Yes. One of the other things, though, that I really love about God is that he says such lovely things about us. It's not saying that there isn't a judgment about our behavior or anything else, but he does think wonderful thoughts about us and looks on us as with pride and joy. And when he made us at the very beginning, he said it was very good, that we were very good. And people spend a lifetime worrying about being very bad and trying to improve themselves, really. I can't remember an age as there is now when there are so many self-improvement groups of things happening.
Yeah. And so many urges to be better.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, there it is. There exactly is a demonstration of what we've been grappling with in these first 14 minutes. When you said that, I was overcome by, a sense of relief and goodness when you said, and God, God said it was good, and we are God's pride and joy. Just, that's the language is code, isn't it, for ideas, and what's meant in my mind by good and pride and joy and so on. And I felt better just hearing that, and therein lies the power of words.
And he wants to keep us that way, keep saying those things to us. And obviously there are things that we can both say. He wants us to be like him in that way, and how that is our standard for relationships with other people.
Yeah,
is what he thinks of us and what our potential is. And that actually brings me to sort of a bit of a change that I had this evening, just before, while I was grappling with the technology, as usual, to get on to the broadcast this evening. And again, just had to sit there and pray in the end and say, okay, Lord, this is down to you. I think you want me to do this, so just get me on. And I don't know what happens then, because I don't seem to do anything differently, but I got here. And but we hear a lot. What I kept having going off in my head then was just, who are we grateful to? Who do we say thank you to? Who gets our appreciation? And thinking it's quite strange, really, that most of the time God does not get that. And so I looked up a scripture, which is in the beginning of the book of Romans, where it says that in spite of the fact that people can see the beauty of creation all around them, that they can see that the world has an order to it, that the sun comes up in the mornings and the moon at night, and we can look and see the wonders, that we never say thank you for them to the one who created them. And it's said in a way that's not sort of, it could be interpreted as being told off, but but it isn't like that when you read through it. And I was just thinking, that is a sort of statement of the grieved heart of the Creator at what we do, both with his creation and our attitude towards him, that we don't thank him. You know, we have I don't know this, but whether you've experienced this, but it's become popular to be grateful and to give thanks and so on and so forth. But I've never heard anybody in the groups that we've just referred to, this sort of self-improvement groups and things like that, will say do it because it makes you feel better. But sort of why not do it because it's true?
Yes.
To the one who created it. And I don't know, Carl, what do you do when you're grateful? Do you? I mean, if you were continually sort of standing in a corner in your room after your wife gives you dinner or something, and you're just saying to some space, you know, I'm really grateful that I've got dinner and things, and she's in the room having worked probably quite hard to produce it, it would be a bit grieving of her heart.
Yes. What, that she wasn't the focus of my gratitude?
Yes.
Yeah. I definitely have something to say about that. You've kind of hit a zeitgeist again. I mean, the advertised theme, just so that we're not getting a visit from the Trading Standards office tonight. The advertised theme was life and death, beliefs and choices, and we were going to look at, I think, part 6 of our working through the Lord's Prayer, because we've still got some way to go, I think, haven't we?
Yes, and we are going to go to that.
Okay, all right. Let's say good evening as well to the Furtados are here this evening. Boa noite a todos, and with your lovely array of coloured hearts there, Rizal. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Great discussion. I'm quite enjoying this, as Rizal. I'm so glad. And and please chip in with your thoughts. And greetings, my brethren. Very biblically stated there, Ernest. Good evening to you, my friend. Great to have you both here tonight. Yes, gratitude. I in your elaboration and explanation there of what was on your mind, I am aware that I am grateful to God fairly regularly these days, but more so. I mean, that's, I'm not that whether I am or not is less relevant than what occurred to me, which was, I think all thanks go to God. It's almost like it's as though that's one of the physical. I mean, in the world as I understand it, if you issue gratitude, it goes to God, but it might go through other people on the way, or things, or yourself, or whatever it is. But it's like, well, because everything goes to God, so thanks would as well. But there's something really special, I think, and I've never thought this before, apart from you prompting it tonight. There's just something really wonderful about when we are grateful. We're in that moment of giving thanks. We are also receiving love.
Yes.
I think that seems to be what happens. It's like you're consciously aware of your good fortune, that you might have life, and whatever is the suddenly the object of your gratitude, because that's how humans work, isn't it? They often need an object to be pointing on, and that's just like a trick of the human mind. So it and in a funny sort of way, it doesn't really matter, but it is also great that it does matter, in the sense that we could be conscious that all our thanks go to God, even if they do go through each other or through other manifestations in the universe. So when that extra aspect is there of it's like the completion, it's the fullness, isn't it? It's the fulfillment of gratitude, to know that it is between our seeming separateness and the vastness of what we might call God, and that makes it really special.
I think it does make it special, but it's also very exciting, because what can we do for God? Absolutely nothing. He's got everything.
Yes.
He has a conversation with several people in the Bible, and actually reminds them that he doesn't really sort of need them or anything else. I mean, I think we only exist because love has to have an object on which to lavish attention and someone to love.
Mm.
It's I lost what I was going to say. Oh yes, what I was going to say was that it's just pleasing to him. It's the one thing that we can give him.
Yeah.
And I think it's so lovely with children, isn't it? When when they're thankful for the things that their parents do or give to them. And we don't want them to be falling over, sort of licking our feet, and I don't think God feels like that. But, it's just really nice because it makes you. There's a warmth, and that's what you're describing. That love flows in that, in between you, and it was definitely a very important thing for me in my marriage. That was, learning how to be grateful, and to count the blessings of each day that had been provided by being with another person, rather than counting the things that were going wrong.
Yes, I agree entirely, and it is special. I mean, and that's probably why we try and make our children well mannered, is because we recognise that the please and thank you. There is a spiritual depth to that beyond the social conditioning, and the situation you described there, being thanked naturally and spontaneously by a child, is such a beautiful moment, because it's like, they don't have to do it, but they've been struck by something which they need to express what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and they were spontaneously and in many ways so much more beautifully than adulterated people. They just I can feel it. When my children have rather than done it from like the Lord's Prayer, right? Instead of doing it as thank you, like school assembly, thank you, miss. That it's like it's come out as a really natural connection. They want to say thank you, as though they don't know what else to say to satisfy this. I mean, and I guess we can relate to it as having been children ourselves, that something arises in you, doesn't it, that you have to share, and saying thank you and being thankful is such a great connection.
Yes,
because it's our own awareness of our blessing, isn't it, that is upon us, and then the sharing of that across the void that I talked about before to the other person in the room. And then beyond that, I think, like I said before, all thanks go to God thereafter. And there we are. We've all been blessed, haven't we, in that? Because you said that before, didn't you? And the giving and receiving, that's a complete and beautiful. There can't be giving without receiving, and that again is like the completion of blessing, and it takes place within the all. And it is a blessing on the moment. It's a blessing for those people. It's just something beautifully expansive about that gratitude seems to bring. And that's why I think it is a new age thing, because people, it's so often the case, isn't it, in the personal development, new age, mind, body, spirit movement, that these principles are being toyed with at some level. And that's not to diminish people's own personal experience and depth with those things, but they often come in at a particular level, don't they? Like, be grateful. This is the way to get what you want, for example. People are definitely onto something with that. I'm not knocking it. And then perhaps it goes on. It gets bigger, and the gratitude becomes less and less conscious, and less of a scheme, and more of a natural. Just I don't know what else to say, but thank you.
Yeah.
Because I think we know that state, don't we? I can't do anything except say thank you.
Well, I'm looking at the brightness of your screen, and mine is diminishing.
Shall I tell you?
I realise that I need to go put a light on.
Or
I'm sitting almost. It's getting dark around me, and I haven't got any lights on. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and put a light on.
I will just do the comments while you do that. I'm literally showing off here by virtue of my studio lighting. So Margia, hello Margia, lovely to have your company. Good evening to you. Greetings to you. Oh look, and then there was light. I love that. All thanks go to God. Yes, Rizal. That just this is what happens when I talk to Jacqueline. Things come out like that. I was super grateful today when I put gasoline in a diesel car. Yikes. And he promised angels to rescue us. I think doing it that way around, you had the Lord on your side to begin with. I think it's much worse the other way around, isn't it? But it sounds like the angels came and you have been saved a terrible fate with that, Ernest. I hope that ended up well for you. Well said. When we feel thankful, we need someone to share it with. Yeah, it just needs to go somewhere, doesn't it? And a link. Thank you, Marja. We'll look at that later on. That's fantastic. I'm sure it's connected. The gratitude becomes automatic from a heart level when I engage in it. Yeah, that's that thing, isn't it, Rosilla, about, how I guess we don't have to, but we might begin by being almost rational and mechanical until a new level is released to us. And I was watching my son playing a computer game today, talking of these levels. He's working hard to get to the next level. And it's the same thing, isn't it? It's the same principle in action here but by grace, being pulled to the next level.
Yes.
Yeah. Ops provided. Does that mean it was sorted out? Okay. I'm not sure what that means. Ops provided, but it's sounding positive. The outcome of today's Furtado drama in Casa Furtado or the mobile office that they are. So let us know how that turned out. You look entirely different, Jacqueline. It was light. There is light.
Yeah, I did 5 minutes ago, sitting here in the room, gradually going dark around me. So interested in the conversation, I hadn't really noticed. So that's a thanks to you, Carl.
More thanks there. More thanks. So that's the theme that's been on your mind, has it? Where on the one hand, we might not be thankful to God and grateful as much as we might, with our focus.
Yes, well, he says we aren't.
Yes, yeah.
So, and I think that sort of that grieves him really, and especially when we get prideful and think that it's all down to us. And it's a bit of a dangerous thing to do, really. I don't think God takes it out on us, but he could, I suppose, if he wanted to. But when you think it says that the world is upheld by the word of his power. In other words, going back to what we were talking about, which is words being powerful, that he holds the whole world in order and keeps it going by his words, which means he's doing it all the time. He didn't just create it and go off and sort of set it in motion and leave it to its own devices.
Like a bottle of wine.
Our gratitude should be there every day, really, for when the sun comes up and that anything's happening, that I'm still able to breathe today. And sometimes I can only start from there. I may be not feeling wonderful, but I can, I can start to say thank you for what bits for me are working. What I can feel, and and it takes us outside of ourselves. We make very small parcels and can be awfully boring if we're just stuck in our own little, what I call in our own world, and where I'm the center of the universe. It's becomes very boring and quite painful.
Yes. Well, when you were speaking there, in what I think you were suggesting is that we could be, we are ungrateful. We could be more grateful. We could actually spend. It's not unreasonable to imagine being constantly grateful if we could but manage it as human beings. Because you talked about healing, didn't you? And
Yes.
on my below my thumb, on the on the sort of the padded part of the thumb, the top side of my hand, I was distracted whilst taking something from the oven, and I was quickly brought back into the moment and undistracted by the searing heat of the element in the oven that burnt the top of my hand. And I did it twice in one day. The first it was pretty, it wasn't a medical emergency. I knew to run cold water on it. But what has stunned me is that I haven't really had to do anything apart from let it heal.
Yeah.
In front of my very eyes. And every time I'm sat at the dinner table, well, not every time, but quite often with the kids, I'm saying, look at that. It's healed up. My own silly, distracted self burnt me. And within a week, or I think it must be, I don't know, it's a week or 2 weeks, but there's just a little mark there to show where it happened. But it is healed without complication.
Yeah.
And what a miracle that is. And that is just one. And I burnt my finger as well the same day, and that's almost completely gone. But that's just one of the many miracles. When you begin to consider it, I say many. I mean, it's getting towards infinite, isn't it? If you did truly begin to count what could be your blessings, you wouldn't have much time for anything else in the day, because they go on and on and on and on. And we could be, and I'm sure some people are, in more of a grateful state. And I imagine that's really good for us as well, to be truly humbled by greatness and to be grateful for the greatness of love and the gift the gifts that we're given. It could take up a lot more of our time and focus and energy, couldn't it, than it does? Yeah. And you're absolutely right. We are so distracted with other things, because you can't think about two things at the same time, can you? We tend to be single-tracked thought machines. And so whilst we're thinking about our problems or our schemes or whatever it is that people think about all day long, we're not being grateful. I don't think that's possible. So it has to be a conscious act, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we could be grateful more. We could be grateful most of the time, in fact. And I wonder what that would be like. And I suspect, I guess we get a sense of that from some historical spiritual figures who are so, I mean, they're almost struck, aren't they, by, I have read people's accounts of just like, I mean, on the one hand, people who are so unhappy, they lie down and they're disabled by their human condition. And I think we've probably all been there at some point, some longer than others. But I've also heard accounts of people who are so suddenly aware of grace that they're disabled by that as well. They are completely overcome and so grateful and so thankful for what is obviously the most incredible blessing, that they can't do anything either. They're equally debilitated by greatness. And what an amazing state that must be.
I actually believe eventually that if we do practice it long enough and keep reminding rather than letting all the negative things come in, which is, I mean, we do live in a very negative world in a lot of ways, and so it's quite easy to be distracted into that.
Mm.
And again, if you actually believe that we have an enemy, that's what he's out to do. But I believe, going back to prayer, that it's that's what it just becomes eventually, is just thanking God for things. Yes. And thanking him also in advance.
Yes.
Because as you refocus and you give thanks and you see how he's turned up in your life and provided for you every step of the way, then there's a confidence that builds, that a thing that's your history, and it will go on being your future. And there's that very confident relationship is built out of it as well, which I believe happens between human beings when they're in that covenant type relationship that we are. Yes. With God through Jesus, we can enter that covenant relationship with him, where we can expect him to behave in a certain way to us, and he can expect us to behave in a certain way to him. Yes. And everybody lives happily ever after, as they say, which is actually true.
Yes, that would be the obvious outcome, wouldn't it, of such an arrangement?
Yeah.
If we could manage it. I've got a confession to make. It's slightly embarrassing, but like I said, I have been consciously grateful of just being alive and circumstances and so on. And this morning, Mrs. M said to me, "What were you dreaming about last night?" with a kind of knowing look on her face. And I'm aware that as I'm lying in my bed, that's one of the times when I'm really deeply grateful that all is well. I have a roof, I have comfort and warmth, and I'm aware that I was just making sort of grateful, ecstatic sounds whilst I was lying in bed that were completely misconstrued by my wife. But I was in rapture of my own experience. And yes. So she thought it was something entirely different and more carnal and worldly. But seriously, honestly, I was in the kind of half awareness of between, wakefulness and sleep. I was just, I suppose the closest I could come to it in the animal kingdom is purring.
Yes.
like a contented cat in my bed. Yeah. Because I didn't know. Again, I guess it was maybe purring is cat saying thank you, but I was that cat. And I really,
certainly a contented noise, isn't it? That I don't believe that they purr in pain at all.
Oh, that's right. And people say, don't they, that cats purring is a healing vibration. That there's something very therapeutic about having a cat purring on you. But I was purring with gratitude, and this seems to be what's going on. When I can scale down my human concerns and woes, and preoccupations, that's there. So it's wonderful.
Actually, I had an interesting experience during the week too, because I had a day, I can't remember which day it was, whether it was this week or last week, but I suddenly got really, really depressed. And it's not usual for me. And I just really felt depressed and I couldn't understand, or oppressed, I think is probably the more correct word for it. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I actually experienced God's correction in a very loving way. Ooh. And I realized that I hadn't done something that I had promised that I would do. In other words, I hadn't fulfilled my word on something. And he showed me. And I didn't go, at one time I would have probably felt guilty and gone into remorse and, gone blah, blah, blah. And, I just said, oh, I'm so sorry. And then just as quick as that, just got up and did what I had to do. And it immediately lifted. Beautiful. And I thought, and for me, that was a very good demonstration of why it is that God knows best about how we should live our lives, So it wasn't like, oh, you've sinned and you're a naughty girl, now I'm going to beat you up, and make you miserable. It was just his very gentle way of bringing me back onto course and saying, you'll feel better if you do this.
And that was it, because that's what I wanted to.
End of story. It just lifted absolutely instantly.
Yes.
And so there is a verse that says that God disciplines those that he loves. And of course you do. When you discipline your children, you tell them, don't run out in the road and run under a bus, things like that. Because because it's good for them and it's protective towards them.
Yes.
But I've never experienced it quite. It's often taken me a very long time to get to what's going on, and then it's been, maybe I haven't seen it as clearly as that. But this was God's correction.
Yes.
God's solution, and being instant about doing it. Now, we could say, I would then describe that I was instantly obedient to what he told me to do.
Yes.
And yet there's something different in saying that. There's something about obedience that makes us go, oh, I'm not going to do that.
Yes, yes.
The word. It's another one of those words that has been manipulated and sounds to be very harsh.
Obedience.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, we obey the law of gravity, hopefully, otherwise we'd be jumping out of windows all the time. And
it does help. And also, I mean, you know, as any of us...
And then hurting yourself really badly, if not killing yourself.
we all know the consequences of not being obedient to the law of gravity, don't we?
Absolutely.
At any age in our life, it doesn't let up at all with its pull on us. But with your I love that, you know, you got a fax, didn't you? A divine fax with a you got a memo. You got a divine memo in that moment of oppression. And I would like to think what came to mind was that, you know, the mind closes, doesn't it? The human mind closes on its oppressed, depressed sense of self, but the heart can stay open. And it's like the memo, the divine memos come in through the heart, don't they? Rather than the clogged mental facilities that get hijacked by all these ideas and self-doubt and self-recrimination and self-judgment and so on. And that's what occurs to me about you and I mean, you've conditioned yourself to receive divine memos through the heart. It feels like, and then you know,
I call it listening to God and hearing from Him.
Yes,
and, you know, people maybe misunderstand what that means, but to me, that's really important. And God speaks to us spirit to spirit.
Yes,
that's also why we need to be born again with a new spirit.
And what do you think? What do you think is the means by which that message came to you, and what was it that allowed you to hear it in a way that you might not have heard that, right? You might have still been oppressed to this point in today. We might be having this conversation. That state might have still stayed with you. So what have you done, or how are you being about life or your approach that allowed that moment of grace to occur?
Well, I asked Him.
Okay.
And that, you know, that is again, I'm giving you scripture, but it says that call unto me and I will answer you. And I'll tell you what wonderful things I'm going to do. It doesn't say call unto me and I'll answer you and beat you up for a bit. And then when I think you've been punished enough, or you've done 3 crawling around on your knees, or you've whipped yourself, or you whatever it is, but people interpret that. But I'm sorry, I'm getting naughty. But, you know, and it's instantly, and you know, I was sorry also, and sorry doesn't mean a thing if you say sorry and then don't put the situation right.
Yes.
I mean, in relationships, human relationships, people are always saying sorry to each other, but then they go do exactly the same thing 2 seconds later, or they don't put it right, you know.
We at this rate, Jacqueline, we're going to need a lexicon of reinvented, not reinvented, but re-understood words. This, you know, there's a pattern here, you know. So we look at forgiven, we're looking at obedient, we're looking at covenant. So many words come up where we preface using the word with, well, people mean something different these days by this, or, you know, this word has been taken and used in a different way, usually as a way of beating themselves or other people up, as it turns out. But these beautiful words have really been I guess dumbed down would be the common current phrase, wouldn't it? They've lost their power, which brings us right back to where we started. The power of words, of course. But yeah, there you go tonight. Obedience, and the one I can't remember what you just said, but that's what prompted me to say that. How we've lost
And we say sorry. Yes.
Sorry, that's it. Yeah, how the act of being sorry is so much deeper, isn't it, than sorry? The cursory, quick batting off of a situation with a quick sorry. It's really, it can be very profound, can't it, to be truly sorry, and it needn't be. It can be very cleansing and very freeing, rather than
joyful. It can be joyful.
Yes. Yeah.
It can be joyful, and people think about repentance as being something that I think perhaps I just described. That you have to do something awful to yourself. You have to suffer,
yes.
And repentance actually just means turning around,
yes,
and doing the opposite.
Yeah.
So if we're walking in the wrong direction and we turn around, that's repentance.
Yes.
And you can be quite sorry, as well, without making a big issue of it. But, I'm sorry I've wasted 10 minutes going in the wrong direction when I actually wanted to go this way. I've gone that way instead. I mean, I was talking to Louise about driving and saying the only time I've ever driven on the wrong side of the road in Portugal was having made a U-turn, and I'd gone through the village to go towards Caldas, which is, there are about 20 different ways you can go from my house to that city, and I realised I had actually wanted to go a different way because I'd wanted to make a stop on the way, so I decided to turn around just outside the village and come back. And as I was driving back down the road, there was this car coming straight towards me on what I thought was my side of the road,
Yes. How dare
I was saying the most awful things, like, what
Yes,
does it think he's doing? Yes.
Yes.
I'd gone quite a long way, and probably 3 cars later before the penny dropped and I realised I was on the wrong side of the road.
What, you driven 2 or 3 other vehicles to the other side of the road in your certainty?
Yeah.
That's a great metaphor for life, isn't it?
And I just thought, I was really sorry, but I couldn't find those people to go and say sorry to. But I was really sorry for what I'd done, but I was so right, I thought I was so right.
Yes, it's a great metaphor.
It must be their fault.
Yes, and after the 3rd car, the penny dropped. That's amazing, and that is so much like so much of our lives, I think. And Rosella's making a beautiful point here. God is gracious when we're truthful about our sins. There's another one of those words, sins, that's we've translated and re-evaluated here when we'll be talking on a Friday evening. But that's the same thing, isn't it? It's like, this is what I've done. I have done this.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to do something different. And how joyful and how freeing that could be, rather than the nettles and the horsehair and all the other things that are now associated with repenting. Incredible. And the result likes the metaphor as well. Get out of the way, you silly fool. You're on the wrong side of the road. Car number 1. Car number 2. What is wrong with all these people? Car number 3. There's loads of them. Am I the only sane person in this world?
Whoops, it's me.
Yes. And I know that feeling as well. I know the feeling when you realize it is you and not them. That's quite something, isn't it? And something to be embraced for the best, I think. Wow. Oh, result as also, that was an oops, not an ops. God absolutely provided an angel to help us. Excellent. So glad to hear it. And Marja likes a bit of purring with gratitude as well. Something to be learned from the cat world there.
Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely.
Yes. Can I share? I don't know if you've finished sharing your particular metaphor there, or if you wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that.
No, that's fine. Go. I can hear the bubbling inside you.
Yes, well, no, I mean, what I wanted to share is something that I found a bit difficult today, which was seeing a picture of, I've called it my Archduke Ferdinand moment of the pandemic, because, you know, the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand, I think in the First World War, or before even the First World War was a thing, was the moment that the political world, the diplomatic world, the relationship between nations changed and became the pivot to cause the First World War. And for me, I'm thinking there's going to be a moment where I just can't take any more of this nonsense that's going on in the world, and all of these things that don't make sense. And I think I saw it today, and I want to talk it through to just be less burdened by it, and to feel less, I suppose, judgmental and awful about it. But I saw today and what irked me particularly was it was called the Hand of God, and it's two latex gloves that are knotted together to form what feels like, two hands, and then filled with warm water, and is put on the hand of somebody in towards the end of their life to help them feel like there's somebody there with them. And I find it so upsetting, Jacqueline. Are you feeling that? And I also feel in wanting to be fair about that. I understand that the people in that caregiving situation, that's the best they can do, and they feel it's the best they can do in the awful situation that we are in collectively. I don't mean to mock or blame or be horrible to anybody who's done that, but as a statement, as a larger statement on society and where we're at, I just thought it was tragic, absolutely tragic, that this person is on the way out. It wouldn't be a bad thing for them to have their hand held by a human being, presumably. Now it's not like they're going to get a lethal infection. They're going.
Yes.
And it just occurred to me that's the triumph of the man-made rational mind. The road to hell, and no good deed goes unpunished. The road to hell is good. It's well-intentioned. I've no question about that. And I can't do the job they're doing. They're wonderful people. And then I saw that, and I just thought, I don't know. I just don't know what to do with myself about that, because it just seemed like such a human thing to be doing, and to call it the hand of God just seemed, oh no, please, it was just awful. So
we know what the hand of God would do.
Well, yeah, I mean,
we know that because it again. Going to the Bible for an example of that. Leprosy was a disease that was talked about quite a lot in the Bible, which was highly, highly contagious.
Yeah.
And people still work in leper colonies, but there was a leper approached Jesus and asked and said, if you're willing, you could heal me. I mean, he had seen Jesus heal many people, probably, or heard about it, but he had to ask him if he was willing. And I think that actually touches my heart, just like the story of the latex gloves, because and Jesus touched him. That was the first thing he did.
Yes.
He touched him.
Yes.
He laid hands on him. He didn't treat him any differently. He didn't say, well, you'd better go over there and I'll pray for you,
Yeah.
And,
social distancing, please, my man.
And actually, it reminds me of another thing, because it's, as Christians, quite often we will say, we will use prayer as an excuse for not doing. We'll just say, oh, I'll pray for you,
Yeah.
When the actual compassionate thing to do is put your arms around somebody. And I had a fully masked man turn up to visit me a couple of days ago. Walked through the door, and I said, "Are you not going to give me a hug then?" And immediately took his mask off and gave me a hug.
Yes,
that's what I needed right then, was a hug.
Fantastic.
I don't like to be it's like a load of bandits walking about.
Well, that's what, if you'd said that 2 years ago, a fully masked man walked into my house, we'd all be thinking, "Oh no, are you okay?" But now it's like, that's just normal. That's what strangers and visitors do. I mean, that shows you what the pretty past we've come to, doesn't it? That can be said in conversation without raising. In fact, it can be said in conversation as the right thing to do now. You know, he's behaving appropriately according to current social norms, isn't he? Which 2 years ago,
being considerate of me.
yes,
This is the other thing, isn't it?
yes, that's.
I appreciate that. You know, again, I'm not knocking it. If that is what somebody thinks that they're doing to protect me, then it's
Yes.
then it's very kind of them.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, you know, what we. I don't think we should be letting people die on their own, or
It's horrific, isn't it?
I mean, I've suffered a lot of loneliness in my life, and I'm not complaining about it because it's taught me a lot of how much we need human connection, you know, and
Yes.
and in a lot of ways, the pandemic has actually helped me make connections with people, and because more people have been online. But I don't want to be alone in my life. You know, I don't want the ultimate outcome. I don't know if you ever saw films where they sort of predicted, like they do, of end time sort of situations where people were all living in little isolated units and their food appeared up like one of those, what used to be called a dumb waiter.
Yes.
You know, into the room, and then they were all waiting to get to a certain age where they were then called off to be put down, you know, like.
Yeah.
I
don't want to see that film.
It's your time to die, you know, and you think, well, what was there ever point of me being here, you know?
Yes. A point well made by that movie, I'm sure.
Yes.
Rizal, as well as saying it's a fantastic episode, thank you. It's a pleasure, Rizal, honestly. As human beings who came from love, it can be hard to see that love and tenderness and compassion are now two latex loves. Excuse me. What can possibly replace a loving human touch?
Nothing.
Good question.
Nothing can resolve. There isn't anything.
Yes.
And when, having been in the sort of healthcare business for a long time, which was all dependent on touch, I just know how much can be communicated by touch and received by touch, and it's an awful shame that that we've twisted it so much, not just in COVID now, but you know, in everything else. Everything was at one time being twisted because it was always seen as something sexual or sensual.
Indeed.
Wasn't at all, you know. So you know, I've spoken to guys who were afraid to touch their teenage daughters because they might get turned on by them, you know. I mean, that was like, oh my, how did we get to this?
Lord have mercy, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we have reached our allotted time.
Yes, we have, haven't we?
We haven't. I mean, it's been a proper plot twist tonight. No, not the advertised theme, and no mention of the Lord's Prayer. So I guess we're carrying forward to part 7 of the where would it take that long to analyze the Lord's Prayer and to reimagine it? Except here on life, death, and everything in between. But it's been wonderful this evening, and thank you to everybody who's tuned in. If you've declared yourself or not, but certainly the Furtados, Rizal and Ernest, and Marja, who are here tonight. And I'm hoping Joe will return at one point. He was with us last week. He may have been tuned in. And thank you, Jacqueline.
I would love to meet Joe. So
shall I make
you are listening, Joe, turn up and let us know how I can meet you.
Maybe I should give him an official invitation on behalf of the of our organisation during the week. Okay. And we'd love to have you on the screen with us, Marja, as well. Well, I say I would. I can't use the royal we, but I suspect you.
Yes, you can use the royal we, because I think I've already said so.
Okay, all right.
So you're allowed to use the royal we.
Excellent. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I don't want to take liberties with the royal we at all. So thank you. Did you have a closing share or something you wish to conclude with tonight, Jacqueline?
I think in a way we have been actually talking about the prayer, because it's about we were still on forgiveness and we hadn't moved on from there. And that is in saying, you know, I have done wrong, God just forgives us and moves us on, you know. And so in a way it is part of that. And but my closing thing would be the end of the Lord's Prayer. Let your kingdom come, your way of doing things, you be king in our life. And let more and more people see that that is a benevolent, loving, extravagantly giving kingdom, and that as part of it we can be extravagant lovers and givers and forgivers and all of the things we've mentioned so far in the Lord's Prayer.
Beautiful.
That when we receive it from our Maker, we can give it out very easily.
Yes, yes.
And always be full.
Yes. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And good night, everyone, or good day, wherever you are. Maybe we now have people watching from a different area. We don't know.
Indeed, indeed. Bye for now. We'll see you next week, 8 o'clock Portuguese time here on these same platforms and outlets. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you. Good night.
Good night.